Good morning, everyone.
Is renowned for her energy and passion. And I promise you, if the coffee didn't wake you up, Elizabeth will. I can confirm that she is worth getting out of bed for. I'm thrilled to present our next political key speaker, Elizabeth May. As co-leader of the Green Party of Canada, Miss May is one of Canada's best-known parliamentarians, having been involved in federal politics for nearly 20 years. She has seen many aspects of the federal government at work throughout her career. She has seen Canada through many crises and turning points. Elle comprend que nous sommes.
And she understands that we all work together for the good of Canada.
That municipalities can make, as well as the significance of being able to deliver key resources and essential services to our communities. That's why I'm so pleased to be able to introduce her to the main stage at FCM's annual conference this morning for her keynote address. Please welcome Elizabeth May.
Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm going to claim.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, haven't seen you in so long, sister. Merci. C'est très tôt le matin.
Thank you very much. It's very early in the morning. I hope that you have had your coffee.
By acknowledging that we're on the traditional territory unceded of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples, the Parliament of Canada sits on their land, and to them we say a deep miigwech for tolerance and patience. We acknowledge territory, and we do it increasingly pro forma, and one has to wonder at what point we start saying land back, but that's another issue. I'm also here to say that I love FCM. I do, honestly, and for a long time. Rebecca was your president, Rebecca Bly, was just asking me how many FCM conferences I have spoken to, and I'm not sure, but I think at least 10. One of the things was, even before I was involved with the Green Party, and I was thinking back about this isn't part of my speech, but then again, you know, what's the point? It's really early. But I remembered the first time that I partnered with FCM was before I was in politics. I was executive director of the Sierra Club of Canada. Some of you will remember Louise Comeau, because she left Sierra Club and went to FCM. Louise and I, and a wonderful counselor from Toronto, he passed away a couple years later, Don Leckie. There's Don Leckie Way, is one of the little streets in Toronto. Anyway, Don Leckie and Louise and I went in to see then Finance Minister Paul Martin to convince him that for climate action, what we really needed was money to FCM, money that could be accessed by local governments across Canada. And we convinced him to create a revolving fund that became Partners in Climate Protection, which we now know has leveraged that first investment into billions and billions of dollars that has delivered real results across Canada. So I look at this next government. I mean, I'm not going to give you a campaign speech, although God knows I would have loved it if we hadn't been thrown out of the debates. So we would have been sufficiently relevant for people to attack our platform, because that might have drawn some people to read our platform, which, by the way, brought down the deficit faster than any other party and has a bunch of really cool ideas for how to get more revenue into the Government of Canada to do the things we need to do. They're published on the Parliamentary Budget Office website if you want to look them up now. Still not too late. I hope to encourage our Prime Minister to steal some of those ideas, because I'm so excited about them. If we want to protect resource industries from Donald Trump, for example, one thing we could do is to create strategic reserves of Canadian resources so that we insist on processing them here instead of ripping and shipping them out raw. No more raw log exports, for example. Do you know the only Canadian resource for which we actually have a strategic reserve system? Maple syrup. So we costed out what would happen to the United States, what would happen to Canadians. What if instead of Canada savings bonds, we issued Saving Canada bonds? And every Canadian could buy a bond, and then we'd buy up the potash and wait till the Americans are screaming, and we would have a really good price back for every Canadian that bought a Saving Canada bond. Never mind. So, I love you. Wouldn't it be fun if we had to, it's not like I'm against Donald Trump. Who couldn't love a narcissistic lunatic madman in the White House? I went to his prayer breakfast as part of Team Canada. My contribution to Team Canada was to keep my mouth shut because I was losing my mind. Never mind. I hope, and I'm very grateful to FCM, and I thought Rebecca Bly did a genius job in interviewing the Prime Minister on this stage. Well done, you. I want Mark Carney to be the best Prime Minister Canada's ever had. Right now, I'm hoping, right? I don't know. I'm an opposition party leader who doesn't want to have to get tough with our Prime Minister. I have to hope that he remains the guy who wrote the book Values, which explained the climate emergency and what happens when we procrastinate, probably better than anybody I've ever seen. I won't read the whole quote, but if you have a copy of Values at home and you're using it to keep something heavy from falling over, it's a very large book. Page 273, you can look it up. The carbon budget, I'm quoting, the carbon budget to limit temperature rise to below catastrophic levels is rapidly being exhausted. It goes on to explain how much time we don't have. Right now, as I speak to you, my heart is in my throat. I was talking, of course, to Kathy Valentino from Thompson, everybody, and the mayor, George Fontaine, wherever you are right now, God bless you, Mayor of Flin Flon. My heart is in my throat for the people of the communities of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, now threatened by out-of-control wildfires. It won't be long again before they're in my home province of British Columbia. It was 2 years ago today that every single province of Canada had out-of-control wildfires. Every province except Prince Edward Island at that point. And in those days, we'd have regular briefings for all opposition party leaders from then Minister for Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair. We have to think like a country, act like a country, and pull together. And that's why, in the face of multiple crises and multiple threats, we need Mark Carney to be the best possible Prime Minister he could be. And that means we have to acquaint him with the need for partnerships with local governments, because you are the ones who really deliver. You are tried and true and reliable. Remind him that in the 2008 financial crisis, the Conservative Minister, John Baird, said, if it wasn't for municipalities, they really delivered. We asked for shovel-ready projects. They showed up. They delivered on time and on budget. FCM, you've got a track record. Individual mayors and councillors, we've got track records. We need to do more than's ever been done, as the Prime Minister says, to build homes faster, to build them as affordable, to deal with an out-of-control, it's not necessarily out of control, but God only knows it's a crisis of mental health and addiction. Our healthcare system is falling apart. Provinces take the money on federal provincial transfers for health, but they don't report on how they spend the money. We need to change the way we make decisions in this country, and that was what I thought one of the more poignant moments in Rebecca's conversation with the Prime Minister, when he said, we're all going to be together in Saskatoon as First Ministers. Note the irony, they're going to have to stay indoors, because if they go outdoors, there's already a health warning from the smoke. But Rebecca pointed out to him quite rightly, President Bly, I shouldn't be so familiar. Local governments aren't at the table at your meeting in Saskatoon. Local governments have to be at the table as of right and not by some kind of favor done to the children that are at the table as, yeah. We need, anybody in politics knows, and every Canadian knows, we don't want to reopen the Constitution. But we want to rethink the federation, so that we think like a country and act like a country. So I agree, not 13 economies, one economy, but not treating the most, and I've got to say, the most reliable, committed, hardworking, underpaid governance level in this country. Local governments have to have a seat at the table, and that table should be called the Council of Canadian Governments, plural. Australia does it. Local governments are at the table. They, between their equivalent of provinces and the federal government and the local governments, come up with national goals. The Canadian version that Greens see is the Council of Canadian Governments, plural, with Indigenous governments, local governments, and FCM would have to nominate enough people from a rural caucus and big city mayors and send them together with the premiers and the prime minister to set, by consensus, national goals, and then we all row in the same direction to deliver those goals. We've got enough external enemies. We don't need internal enemies. So, we've got some allies. I don't think I've ever seen a cabinet. I've been trying to think of it. I've got a good memory, and as you can see, I'm 70 now, and I've got I don't know if it's a curse or a blessing to have a good memory at 70. I think mostly it drives me nuts. Why do people forget that just happened and you forgot about it already? Never mind. Collective amnesia is a thing. Unfortunately, I have a good memory. But we need to make sure in this country that we pull together now. We need to make sure we learn the lessons from things we got right, like how we dealt with the 2008 financial crisis by enlisting municipalities to deliver shovel-ready projects. We need to think back on how it is that we know in an emergency we are able to act. And as I said, I'm drawing on my memory banks. I don't think I've ever seen a cabinet where 2 cabinet ministers are former mayors. So Gregor Robertson, former mayor of Vancouver, and of course, recently a board member of FCM, Rebecca Alty, who's now Minister for Indigenous Crown Relations. If you're looking at, as communities are on fire and people are running for their lives, nobody knows that experience better than Rebecca from when she had to order the evacuation of Yellowknife. It wasn't easy, it was brave. We have to be able to convince this new government that they're not going to be able to deliver on laudable goals without strong partnerships with every order of government and a seat at the table, and stable, predictable funding is needed now for all of you. So we've got a new minister, I should also mention, Eleanor Aluski. I hope I pronounced her name right, but she's the new Minister for Emergency Management and Community Resilience. If she's not in touch with you as the best possible partners, get in touch with her. We've got a lot of work to do in this Parliament. We've got to create economic sovereignty for Canada, protect our economy, protect every community, and be prepared for a world that is increasingly unstable. We have to inspire our youth to believe that their future in this country is bright. In fact, we have to figure out how to open our doors to people from other countries who need to have a safe, predictable, stable place to live. We have to, and some of it is self-serving. Let's get all their doctors and scientists. And, come on home, kids. No Trump here. I don't see him. No. We have to be an oasis of sanity in an increasingly unstable world. And we can, because it's who we are. And I think if any of us think in this moment, and I am thinking minute by minute of what people are going through in Flin Flon and other communities that are at risk, Cross Lake, First Nation, Pimachikamak. We all know that there's nowhere else. I try to think of another country. There's no country I want to live in except here. We're the luckiest people on this planet because we live here. It's our country. And we live in the best communities, and Canadians share values of taking care of each other, leaving no one behind. That's why we have a universal public health care system. We don't have a country built on the doctrine of every man for himself. We have a country built on love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. I practice it in Parliament every day. I make a point of loving every other MP in there. And as I say at the end of some days, it's easier to love them than like them. But it's better to reach out. So again, everybody, let's remember, elbows up, arms outstretched. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you.